New Mexico is unique for so many reasons, but its rich cultural fabric might be the most rewarding. Sometimes lost in that history are the contributions of African American settlers in the 19th century. Now, facing the rising sun, the journey of African American homesteaders in New Mexico is a high-tech mobile exhibit aiming to change that. I had the privilege of speaking with some of the people responsible for this work, telling the story of these pioneers while honoring their legacy. Welcome to all of you. Rita, first of all, let me start with you. You have been working this project for as long as I've known you, actually, for quite a long time now. And here it is. Tell us about, how did we come here? What were the circumstances? And how did we end up being in the three places that ended up being the main homesteading areas here in New Mexico?
To begin with, the history of the nation, it was a time of upheaval. The Civil War was going on, had ended, and people were migrating, and so it was a time of mass migration, and people were migrating because laws were coming in. So in the South, the Civil Rights Act of 1875 was appealed, was determined to be unconstitutional. And that act actually allowed for all groups to be in public facilities. And once it was decided it was unconstitutional, Jim Crow came in. So in 1883, when that law was made unconstitutional in the southern states, Jim Crow came in with a vengeance. And so the migration of African Americans, one of the reasons for migration was the oppressiveness of these laws and the cruelty and the types of things that were happening as the South tried to re-enslave its African American population. And one of the reasons the West was popular was the 1862 Homestead Act. And that act allowed people to homestead 160 acres as long as they were 21 years of age, had never picked up arms against the United States, were a citizen of the country, but that was kind of flexible, and only had to pay a minimal fee, do basic improvements over a 5-year period, and then they would get a patent to the land. So I think coming out of enslavement and being property, the idea of owning property and finding sanctuary from the oppressiveness of the South. And then you also had the Buffalo Soldiers who were already in the West. And so many of them were in the state of New Mexico, and these opportunities to own land caused them to stay. And then during that period, sometimes people forget there was an epidemic of tuberculosis. So health also became an issue that brought African Americans to the Southwest.
That's interesting. And what's the time period when we first started coming in? I don't want to say in numbers because it was very much individual decisions, but is there a time period we know that the first families were here from the South?
Well, it kind of starts around, so with the Buffalo Soldiers, it's, kind of earlier, and then they start leaving the forts in like around 1880 in that time frame, and start homesteading in New Mexico. Your families coming out of the South, I would say, are coming out again in the late 1800s. So the Boyer family is coming out of Georgia, and his vision was to start a African American town, sovereign town for African Americans, and he had heard of the Homestead Act. So he's coming out of Georgia in about the late 1800s, and this is like his fourth attempt at starting a sovereign African American town. And so he just saw opportunities. So between, I would say, the late 1800s and maybe about 1925 or so, you had quite a bit of migration to New Mexico because of the ability to own land.
That's fascinating. I want to bring Marilyn in a quick second. That Boyer story is so fascinating that he walked for 9 months with a student from Georgia to get to New Mexico to make this happen. It's the most amazing thing. And Marilyn, when you look at your own family history, I've just got to imagine, when someone's got to want something bad enough to do it, like this. Your family history. Tell us about yours. How did your great granddad come here, and what were the circumstances?
Well, part of it is want, and part of it is preservation.
Right.
Because when they were in Texas, they were threatened. The family was threatened. The Redcoats had threatened to burn their house down.
Oh, wow.
And a very nice neighbor gave my grandfather and his mother a horse and buggy. So they used that to travel to Oklahoma, hoping that in Oklahoma things would be better, hoping that the family would be safer. However, once they were there, they encountered the same types of things, which is, people want to be in a place where they're safe, where their family is safe. That's just like a simple thing, not even the American dream, but really a constitutional issue, wanting to be safe and have liberty. So when that did not happen, they then migrated to New Mexico with some other families, putting their possessions on a train and coming west. Their goal was to go to California. However, when my grandfather, when they got to New Mexico, they saw the Rio Grande River. And I always tell people it had to be spring or summer, because otherwise there would not have been green. So it had to be during that time frame. And during those times, the river, there was a lot of water in the Rio Grande River. Even when I was young, there was a lot of water in the Rio Grande River. And being a farmer, he looked and saw that this could be something that he could raise his family. He could farm, he could plant all kinds of crops, and he knew how to do that. So that got him to New Mexico.
Interesting. Now, where did he settle specifically?
Initially, he was in the Mesilla Park area.
Right.
Old Mesilla, really.
Interesting. Rita, let me bounce to you. I'll bring the fellas in a quick second, but let me bounce back to you, since we're on that part of one of the three enclaves. How big did it get? How thriving was it? What was commerce like? What was day-to-day life like? That's the part that's so interesting to me.
Well, what is interesting about homesteading in the southern part of the state is most of the people who homesteaded under the 1916 stock raising homestead, which was specific to the West. Right. So they were trying to get people to the West because there were vast amounts of land. And so you could homestead 640 acres of land. So imagine having 640 acres of land, and you had about during this time frame, around 1920, right in there, you had about almost 40 African American families that homesteaded in the Las Cruces area in these 640 acres.
Swinging east, of course, to probably our most, infamous enclave is Blackdom, New Mexico. And Rita, could you talk a bit about Blackdom and how Blackdom came to be?
So Blackdom is close to the amount of homesteaders that Vado has. You've got about 40 families that migrate to Blackdom. In the early 1900s, they actually advertised in the Crisis magazine, right. Which is a magazine of the NAACP. Come to this place and you will own your own land. You will be sovereign. You can be self-determined. You will have sanctuary. And Frank Boyer was behind that vision. So he and his family come in the early 1900s. He has, 11 or 12 kids, and his children homestead. And the thing about homesteading was the economic base, because you did have to improve the land. And so they needed economic foundation, and the banks, of course, weren't giving it to African Americans, which meant almost all your homesteaders in Blackdom and Las Cruces and worked full-time jobs in like Roswell or Dexter, while they still had to improve the homestead. And they did incorporate Blackdom in, I think, 1911. They were trying to make a all Black town, and they did have their own church, their own post office, their own schools, their own agriculture. But in the mid 1920s, and they give a lot of different reasons. One was the water, another was an insect infestation. But for whatever reasons, it became not viable to work the land. And most of the homesteaders left Blackdom, either going to Vado or going into Roswell.
Gotcha. Interesting. I'm looking at the actual advertisement you mentioned a second ago. That's at the exhibit. And I'm going to bring in Eric here. Eric, if you can unmute, I want to talk to you about this. It's so interesting to see historical documents, guys, because big letters, wanted, 500 Negro families, farmers preferred, in parentheses. I always thought that was pretty cute. To settle on free government lands in Chavez County, New Mexico. Blackdom is a Negro colony, fertile soil, ideal climate, no, quote, Jim Crow laws. And Jim Crow is in quotation marks. Interesting. For information, write Harold Coleman, Blackdom, New Mexico. No zip code needed, not in those days, that's for sure. And Eric, interestingly, and Thomas, I want to get you in on this too. When you found these, finding these kind of documents, how, adding this to an exhibit, how difficult was it to find? And then, of course, your personal journey, finding them and adding them to the exhibit and getting them done in a technology way as well. It's interesting. Tell us about that.
And yeah, our team was largely an enabler, right? So we really leaned on Rita and family members for a lot of those documents, a lot of that, just a real wealth of photographs from the past and to help tell the story, right? And so part of the exhibit is a touchscreen interactive. So it's really a collection viewer, right? So we can pack quite a bit of information into that, and you don't have to, walk around the room and read everything on the wall, for example. So but combination of that overview and timeline, the individual family stories, and then the story of the lands, and that was all again driven by Rita's vision and of what this exhibit, the story that it would tell. So yeah, it was great to partner with Rita on the layout of these, how they would be most accessible, how we could kind of easily navigate through this large collection of documents, and then working on the captioning. I had the honor of working with Marilyn, specifically with her family, and kind of talking through all the captions there and learning a great deal about their family history. So really unique opportunity for me to I knew almost nothing about homesteading in New Mexico, period, much less the African-American experience with homesteading. So really fantastic opportunity.
Let's get Thomas in here. Sorry, Thomas, I meant to swing you in here just a few minutes ago. Tell us your approach going in as an artist. What did you want to do here? What was your goal with the documentary?
The biggest thing was allowing the family members to tell their story and, put out what they wanted to be put out there, as opposed to taking bits and pieces of their story and telling it ourselves. We wanted to make sure that the families were able to tell their story and basically put what they want out there, because, lots of times I come from a news background, you interview somebody and they watch it on TV and then they're like, that's not what I said. You take bits and pieces of the sound bites and you turn it into a story. But we really wanted to let the people that we interviewed tell this story, so that what really happened was put out there, as opposed to our interpretation of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Rita, before we forget, we've got to talk about a very important part of our migration, which is the East End Edition here in Albuquerque. A lot of folks, again, this is a big mystery for a lot of folks here, and there's been a big fight for a lot of years to get it set aside as a historical area. That has not worked out so far. Tell us, where was the East End Edition located, and how did it come to be a place for us to get a foothold here in Albuquerque?
Well, it was actually on the Lomas, Wyoming area of Albuquerque, and kind of going back to what Marilyn was talking about, what is so amazing about the stories is the thread of vision that people had in these early times. So Dr. James Lewis homesteaded under the 1862 home. He homesteaded 160 acres. He came here for his health. He started 2 tuberculosis clinics, the People's Sanatorium and Booker T. Washington Sanatorium tuberculosis clinics, but he bought this land and he had a vision, because Wyoming and Lomas, there was nothing out there but dirt, there no streets, nothing paved, but he had a vision. And in 1938, he plots it out with a group called the Fraternal Aid Society, which actually pushed African Americans to homestead land. So in 1938, he plots out and gives to Bernalillo County this 160 acres with homes and parks and a community center, and calls it the East End Addition. And it is a viable and interesting community. And we've tried several times to have it part of the historic preservation, because now car dealerships are kind of moving in, buying the homes, but it's such a vital part of the history of Albuquerque. We'd like to see that happen. Yeah.
So all of you, Thomas, Eric, Marilyn, and of course, Rita Padrell, and others who put this on, thank you so much.